The Indian holidays is, rather than being on the Gregorian calendar, like most of our holidays in the West, where wherever the moon may be, whatever the planetary arrangement may be, we celebrate on certain days of the year. We have dates that we celebrate holidays on. But in India, almost all of the holidays are done on a lunar calendar. And the reason that that's important is what it means is that there's an energetic pull on that day. That there's a very specific, whether it's a full moon, whether it's a new moon, whether it's somewhere in between, whether it's an Ekadashi, whatever the actual time of that holiday may be, it's based not on a date in a month that's been chosen sort of arbitrarily in that way, but it's actually based on phases of the moon. And what we know about the moon is that it exerts a magnetic pull on us. And so regardless of how much astrology you may believe in or not believe in, no one can deny high tides and low tides. You don't have to be a religious person. You don't have to believe in astrology. If you've ever been on a beach and you've ever seen the difference between what the shoreline looks like at high tide versus what the shoreline looks like in low tide, what you know is that we have a difference. And that difference is due 100% to the pull of the moon. The pull of the moon is what takes all of the volume of water in the ocean. I have no idea how many liters or gallons of water there are in the ocean, but however many trillions, or whatever the measure is beyond trillions, of liters and gallons of water there are in the ocean, that pull is strong enough that it actually brings the ocean up, not imperceptibly, but like 10 feet, 30 feet, in some places even more. And I bring this up as we start talking about Janmashtani because if you're not Indian, if you're not Hindu, if you're not someone who believes that God came on earth in the form of Lord Krishna, then you can think, well, okay, this is their holiday, but it's not my holiday. But even if it's not the holiday of your religious tradition, what we know is that there is a very, very powerful magnetic pull in the universe at this time. Because the date of these holidays is chosen not based on the day of the week, not based on what date of which month, but based on the cycles of the moon, which means the magnetic pull upon us. And so we are impacted by that, regardless of whether we believe in it or not. So this auspicious pull, sometimes pulls are not so auspicious. Tonight that magnetic pull of the arrangement of the planets, of the moon on us, how the universe is set up tonight is very, very auspicious. As I was saying on the Ghat, on the banks of Ganga, when we celebrate the day that Krishna came in form. It's not about, oh wow, that was so great, wish I had lived at that time, God, that must have been a great day, and celebrate it in memorial like that. No. You'll see when you come tonight for the celebration that'll start at 9 and go till past midnight, the fervor, as it gets closer to midnight, is the fervor not of remembering that time, but of that time being now. Krishna's coming, Krishna's coming, Krishna's coming, Krishna's coming, and that exuberance of it. And so it gives us really a beautiful opportunity to look at so many aspects of our lives. And we don't have that much time, but we'll look at some, and then I'll stop and we'll open it up for questions. But for me, one of the most touching aspects of Lord Krishna's life is, remember, he's God. And so he's omnipotent, meaning when he was going to come on earth in form, he could have theoretically done it however he wanted. He's not bound. When God incarnates on earth, they're not bound by the laws of karma like we are. We came into earth in our family, in our situation, because of our karmic package. But Lord Krishna didn't come like that. He came on purpose. He came consciously. He came knowingly. Which means that he could have done it any way he wanted. But he very specifically chose a situation of turbulence, of trouble. And if you look at his early childhood, so many of us spend our lives well into our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even older, damaged and stuck by what happened in the first 6, 7, 10 years of our life. My God, this is why I am the way I am, because, my mom, my dad, my uncle, my neighbor, this is what happened. Well, if you look at the first 6, 7, 8, 10 years of Lord Krishna's life, what do you have? Trouble after trouble after trouble. We may have had a family member who was mean to us. We may have had someone who was rude, who left us out, maybe even someone who abused us. Krishna's uncle tried to kill him over and over and over again in a whole variety of different ways. And he wouldn't rest until this child was dead. And if you look at as he got older, how he had to then leave Gokul, and I'm not going to go through his life, but what this gives us when we realize that all of it happened by choice, when he was planning this incarnation. And it gave us a message, a very important message, which is, do not think that being spiritual, or do not think that being connected to God is somehow an inoculation against trouble. Because if it were, well then when we look at Lord Krishna, we look at Lord Ram, their lives would have been easy. Everything would have just been exactly what they wanted, right? We think, well, I went to mandir, I did my puja, I chant my japa, why am I having so much trouble? Why are people mean to me? Why is my business failing? Well, if you take just their lives, we can pretty much be sure that nothing any of us is going through, no troubles any of us is going through, comes even close to what Lord Krishna, Lord Ram had to go through in their lives. I mean, has any of us really been banished to the forest for 14 years? Have any of us really been tried to be killed by our family members in our early childhood, over and over again? And the beauty of this is that it reminds us and re-reminds us that the troubles in life, the trials, the tribulations, the difficulties we go through are not something that our spiritual practice or our connection to God is meant to make dissipate. What the spiritual connection breaks, as Pujya Swamiji was saying, it parted the river. The Yamuna that was in flooding like the Ganga now. If someone said, you got to get from one end of Ganga to the other, no bridges, no boats, you'd say, well, it's impossible. There's no way. We're stuck. We're going to drown. But for Krishna, the river came down. What it does is it opens up the path. It makes us unstuck. So whether the stuckness was the locks of a jail, were the chains literally of a jail, whether the stuckness was an obstacle in our life that seemed impassable like a raging river, the presence of God changes that. Because it frees us. Not from troubles, not from difficulties. You know, so many people, the troubles of their life are things, whether it's in school, whether it's in the family, whether it's in the workplace, of feeling like they are chosen against. They work harder than other people, but they're not getting the acclaim or the appreciation or the reward or whatever it is. Well, again, so look at Lord Ram's life, right? He was I know I'm going from Krishna to Ram for a moment, but they're beautiful parallels here in this particular teaching. Well, he was the one who was supposed to be king. It was his big day. But no. Instead of being king, he gets banished to the forest. And so the presence of God, it's not about it's going to make you king, it's going to make you successful, it's going to make everyone love you, it's going to give you all the money. It's not even that it's going to prevent you from going through difficulties. Arjun didn't want to fight the war of Kurukshetra. He said, forget it. Even the presence of Krishna could not make that war not happen. And Krishna had tried. He had tried with Duryodhana. He had tried to play the negotiator, the divine negotiator. But the war had to happen. And so in our lives, we have to remember that our spiritual practice is not about my life should be easy. Our spiritual practice is not about I'll be the most popular one, everybody will love me, I'll be the one selected and chosen and crowned and king, and there won't be any battles or wars or difficulty. Even when God was right there in form, all the difficulties were there, except in the midst of the difficulties. The freedom is internal. It's not about the success outside. It's about the chains being broken of the jail that we are in. Not the jail that we're in because somebody else isn't letting us do what we want to do, or in our workplace or in our family. The jail of our own minds. That's what keeps us stuck. That's what keeps us chained. And so when Krishna comes in our life, when we're connected spiritually, when that divine literally takes birth, those chains are broken. We become free. And that freedom comes in terms of actually in our actions later on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in the Gita, when Lord Krishna is giving Arjuna the whole teachings of how to really be free, how to attain moksha, how to attain liberation, how to attain that state. The answer is not stop acting, stop doing. In fact, Lord Krishna is emphatic. You cannot stop doing. You can sit down, you can close your eyes, you can stick earplugs in your ears. I mean, he didn't say it quite like that. They didn't have earplugs. But the essence of that, you cannot do anything. Sit on your hands. But you're still acting. You're still acting in two ways. Number one, your mind is still on. And number two, not acting. Acts of omission. There's two types of acts. Acts of commission, something I do, and acts of omission, something I don't do. Well, that's also an act. If someone falls down in front of me and I don't help them, that's an action. It's an act of omission. And it carries with it just as much karma as the act of commission. Bending down and helping them is going to bring karma. Ignoring them is going to bring karma. So what he explains to us is you cannot not act. So then, of course, well, how do we be free? And this is where he gives that core teaching of whatever you do, offer it to me. Offer it to me. Surrender. Realize you are a tool. Realize it's not about you. Because of course Arjuna's difficulty, his stress in the beginning is all about, it's about me. Oh my God, I, Arjuna, am going to kill those people who are my relations. I am going to get the bitter fruit of this action, of taking their lives. And this is where Lord Krishna explains to him, who are you? Really? You, Arjuna, are the taker of life? Really? It's perhaps one of the first sort of get off your high horse spiritual talks of you are not what you think you are. You're not the taker of life. Who gave you that control? You are neither the creator of life nor the taker of life. That's me. That's God. That's Krishna. And on an even deeper level, they were never born and they will never die. So neither can you give life nor can you take life, and no matter what you do, they were never born, they will never die. Who they are is soul, and there's nothing you can do to the soul. Shoot as many arrows as you want, it can't touch their soul anyway. So stop thinking it's all about Arjuna. Stop thinking it's all about what you're going to do, what fruits of the karma are you going to get. Because even if you run off, as he says, forget it, I'll go, I'll meditate. Even if you do that, you're still getting the fruits of karma. But now you're getting the fruits of acts of omission. Your duty is right here on this battlefield. Do not think that by running away, you're going to somehow prevent yourself from accruing the fruits of karma. Forsaking your duty, forsaking your dharma is an action. And it carries with it the fruits of that. Stay right here. Fight your battle. But fight it knowing that it's actually all me. That you are a tool in my hand. Chant my name. Remember me. Surrender to me. And do your duty. And it's a beautiful teaching because, as he says, abhayam, fearlessness. Stand up. We've spoken so much about fear in here over the last few nights, and that fear is all rooted in what's going to happen to me. What's going to happen to what I own? What's going to happen to that which is mine? And when we're in God's hands, that fear dissipates. That stress dissipates. And so it's a beautiful night to take that message to heart of how can we be fearless in our lives, regardless of what battle we may be having to do battle with. And the other last point to mention here is, and there's so many points that are coming to me, but just one I'll conclude with so we can take questions, is the Bhagavad Gita is really a scripture of yoga. And it's said as much, and Krishna himself says as much, that this is your scripture of yoga. And throughout the Gita he gives so many teachings on 3 general paths: the path of devotion, the path of action, the path of knowledge, bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga. He talks so much about so many different ways of bringing yoga in our life. But for me, there's one line that's very, very dear, especially as we are practitioners of yoga, of different types of yoga, is he says, yoga is the cessation of the union with pain. Now, the word yoga literally means union. And I won't go into that here, but we talk about that a lot. And this one line is almost paradoxic in a way, because we've gone through all this about yoga's union. The word literally means union. But he very clearly states yoga is the cessation of the union with pain, the breaking of the union with pain. And for me, what that teaching is about, particularly in the Gita, where he doesn't describe any of the physical postures. The yoga is all about how we live, who we are, how we are, what our lives are dedicated to, what our lives look like every minute and every moment. And that union with the divine through yoga, union with God, any name, any form, any religion, it doesn't matter. And Krishna, of course, clears up any doubt that there's only one form when he shows Arjuna that he's everything. So whatever form. But union with that brings about the end, the cessation of pain in our lives. Because most of us are united, but we're united with pain. We're united with our own suffering, whether it comes from our egos or our desires or our fears or our past or our dysfunctional relationships or our expectations that the fulfillment of which is out of our hands. So we're constantly frustrated, constantly worried. Whatever that pain in our lives may be, dedicating ourselves to yoga, which again in this context really means any spiritual path, devotion, service, knowledge, the union of all three of these, of course, and any aspect of that. That union brings about an end of the pain in our lives. And so wherever there is pain, is suffering, is struggle, it's a place for us to know, I guess I haven't really fully united there. I guess I'm not really fully connected there. I guess the divine hasn't really fully taken birth in my life in that place. And it's a beautiful way in to know where for us do we need to let more light in. And this is the night to do it. The night in which the divine comes. Comes on earth, yes. At that time, came on earth in that place, in that situation to those parents. But tonight can take birth literally in our hearts. Pujya Swamiji always says, yes, the divine came in that time, that situation. But as we celebrate it, it's now up to us to give birth to Krishna in our own hearts. That's the celebration tonight. Can Krishna, the divine, the light, come to life in our own hearts? And that is open and possible and available for all of us. And that's the real celebration.